Heinrich Himmler was the Reichsführer-SS, the supreme commander of the vast SS organization that became one of the most powerful and most criminal institutions in Nazi Germany. As head of the SS from 1929 until his suicide in 1945, Himmler controlled the Gestapo secret police, the concentration camp system, the Waffen-SS military formations, the security and intelligence services, and numerous other agencies that implemented Nazi racial policies, including the Holocaust. Himmler himself required constant protection and security, given his prominent position and given the many enemies that Nazi Germany created both within Germany and internationally. His personal security was provided by his own SS guards, elite personnel selected from the SS organization, specifically to protect the Reichsführer-SS and to serve in his immediate presence. These guards, officially part of various SS units, including Himmler's personal staff, his bodyguard detachment, and the security personnel assigned to his various headquarters and residences, numbered dozens of men who dedicated their careers to protecting and serving one of history's most notorious mass murderers. What did Himmler's SS guards actually do all day? How did they organize their time between security duties protecting Himmler, administrative functions supporting his activities, ceremonial roles in SS rituals and events, and their personal lives? What were the specific activities, routines, and responsibilities that filled their days, and that made them among the closest witnesses to Himmler's daily activities and among the most complicit in facilitating his crimes? Today, we'll reconstruct the daily routines of Himmler's personal guards across different contexts and periods, examining the security operations that were their primary mission, the administrative support they provided, the ceremonial functions they performed, their training and military readiness, and the overall pattern of service to a man who was directly responsible for the murder of millions. Understanding what Himmler's SS guards did all day requires first establishing who these men were and what organizations they belonged to within the complex structure of the SS. Himmler's personal security was provided by several overlapping organizations and units. The most immediate protection came from his personal bodyguard detachment, a small unit of perhaps 12 to 24 men who were constantly in Himmler's presence or immediately nearby, who traveled with him wherever he went, and who were responsible for his immediate physical security. These bodyguards were selected for loyalty, for physical capability, and for their commitment to SS ideology, and they served as the innermost ring of Himmler's security. Beyond the immediate bodyguards, Himmler's headquarters and residences were guarded by larger security units that provided perimeter security, access control, communication security, and various other protective functions. These units might number dozens or even hundreds of men depending on the location and the security requirements. Additionally, Himmler traveled with adjutants and personal staff who were not primarily security personnel, but who were SS officers serving in his immediate circle and who were responsible for administrative support, communications, scheduling, and various other functions that kept Himmler connected to his vast organization and that managed his extraordinarily complex responsibilities. These staff members were technically not guards, but their daily routines were similar in many respects, as they also attended Himmler constantly, and their lives were organized entirely around serving him. For the purposes of understanding what Himmler's guards did all day, will focus primarily on the immediate bodyguards and security personnel, while acknowledging that the staff officers and administrative personnel had related roles and routines. The men selected to serve as Himmler's personal guards were elite SS personnel who had demonstrated loyalty, competence, and ideological commitment through their previous service. Many had served in other SS formations, including the Leibstandarte SS Adolf Hitler, which was the premier SS unit responsible for Hitler's security, in the SS Verfügungstruppe, which was the predecessor to the Waffen-SS, or in the Allgemeine SS, which was the general SS organization. Selection to serve as Himmler's guard was considered a prestigious assignment that reflected trust and that provided access to the highest levels of the SS and Nazi leadership. The guards received special training in personal security procedures, in weapons handling, in martial arts and hand-to-hand combat, in intelligence and counterintelligence basics, and in various other skills relevant to protecting a high-value target in a dangerous environment. They were required to maintain peak physical condition to demonstrate absolute loyalty to Himmler personally and to SS ideology, and to be willing to sacrifice their lives to protect the Reichsführer-SS if necessary. A typical day for a member of Himmler's personal bodyguard would begin early, as security operations required round-the-clock coverage, and as guards worked in shifts to ensure that protection was constant. A guard beginning a morning shift might wake at 5 or 6 a.m., would conduct his personal routine of washing, dressing in his SS uniform, with appropriate insignia, denoting his assignment to Himmler's staff, and eating breakfast in the guards' quarters at whatever location Himmler was currently residing. Himmler maintained multiple residences and headquarters, including his personal house in the Munich suburb of Gmund, where he lived with his wife Margaret and daughter Gudrun, the house near Berchtesgaden, where he kept his mistress Hedwig Pothast and their children, various SS headquarters buildings in Berlin, and field headquarters near military operations during the war. The guards' quarters at these locations provided comfortable accommodations that were superior to standard military barracks, reflecting the elite status of those serving in Himmler's immediate circle. After breakfast and personal preparation, guards reporting for duty would attend a briefing from the security chief or the senior officer on duty. The briefing would cover Himmler's schedule for the day, any specific security concerns or threats, assignments for individual guards to specific posts or protective duties, communications protocols, and any other information relevant to the day's operations. Himmler's schedule was typically very full and often changed at short notice, requiring flexibility and constant readiness from the security personnel. The briefing might indicate that Himmler would remain at his current location for administrative work, or that he would be traveling to meetings, inspections, or other engagements, or that his schedule was uncertain and guards should be prepared for various possibilities. The primary duty of Himmler's guards was close personal protection, maintaining immediate physical proximity to Himmler and being ready to respond instantly to any threat. Several guards would be assigned to close protection during any given shift, positioning themselves near Himmler wherever he went, maintaining constant awareness of the environment, identifying potential threats, controlling access to Himmler by screening anyone who approached, and generally creating a protective bubble around him. The close protection duties required intense concentration and vigilance, as the guards had to monitor everything and everyone in Himmler's vicinity, while remaining unobtrusive and while projecting the image of disciplined SS professionalism, rather than appearing nervous or threatening. When Himmler was in his office or residence conducting routine activities, the close protection guards would position themselves at doorways, in adjacent rooms, and at key access points, maintaining visual contact with Himmler, or at least being close enough to respond within seconds to any alarm or disturbance. The guards would be armed with pistols and sometimes with submachine guns, ready to use lethal force immediately if any threat materialized. The likelihood of actual threats to Himmler in secure SS facilities was relatively low, but the guards had to maintain readiness, as if threats were imminent, as any lapse in security could potentially allow an assassination attempt or other attack to succeed. The guards rotated through different positions to prevent fatigue and to maintain alertness, with a guard typically spending perhaps an hour or two at one post before being relieved by another guard and moving to a different position or taking a break. During the periods when Himmler was traveling, which was frequent particularly during the war years, when he visited concentration camps, military units, occupied territories, and various other locations, the security operations became more complex and more demanding. Travel security required advanced planning, with guards or security personnel being sent ahead to inspect routes and destinations, to coordinate with local SS and police units, to identify potential threats or vulnerabilities, and to establish secure procedures for Himmler's arrival and departure. The close protection guards would accompany Himmler in his vehicle, with typically one or two guards in the car with him, and additional guards in escort vehicles preceding and following Himmler's car. The motorcade would travel at high speed through routes that had been cleared and secured, with local police and SS units controlling intersections and monitoring the route for any threats. Upon arrival at destinations, the guards would exit vehicles first, would scan the environment for immediate threats, would establish security perimeters, and only then would allow Himmler to exit his vehicle. During Himmler's activities at the destination, whether inspecting a concentration camp, meeting with military commanders, observing operations, or conducting any other business, the guards would maintain close proximity, would control access to prevent unauthorized approaches, and would remain alert for any danger. These travel security operations could last all day or multiple days when Himmler was on extended trips, requiring the guards to work long hours without breaks and to remain constantly vigilant despite fatigue and despite the routine nature of most operations, where nothing threatening actually occurred. The ceremonial duties of Himmler's guards were another significant component of their daily activities, particularly during peacetime and during major SS events and rituals. The SS under Himmler's leadership developed elaborate ceremonial practices, including oath-taking ceremonies for new SS members, commemorations of Nazi martyrs, celebrations of solstices, and other events connected to Himmler's interest in Germanic paganism and mysticism, and various other rituals that were central to SS identity and ideology. Himmler's personal guards participated in these ceremonies both as security personnel and as ceremonial participants, wearing special uniforms and insignia, performing military drill movements, and generally contributing to the theatrical presentation of SS power and ideology. The most important ceremonial venue was Wewelsburg Castle in Westphalia, which Himmler renovated and developed as a ceremonial center and ideological headquarters for the SS. Himmler's guards, who were assigned to Wewelsburg duties, spent significant time preparing for and participating in ceremonies, maintaining the castle and its grounds, and generally supporting Himmler's mystical and ideological projects. The castle included a great hall where SS leaders gathered for meetings and rituals, crypts and memorial spaces for fallen SS men, various ceremonial chambers decorated with runes and Germanic symbols, and other features that reflected Himmler's attempts to create a quasi-religious order around the SS guards stationed at Wewelsburg, combined security duties, with roles as custodians and participants in these ideological activities, representing the intersection of military function with Nazi racial ideology that characterized the SS. The training and readiness activities of Himmler's guards consumed portions of their daily schedules when they were not on active duty protecting Himmler or participating in ceremonies. Guards were required to maintain peak physical condition through regular physical training, including running, calisthenics, martial arts practice, and various other exercises. They conducted regular weapons training at firing ranges, practicing with their sidearms, submachine guns, and other weapons to maintain marksmanship and handling skills. They participated in security drills and exercises, where threat scenarios were practiced and where responses were rehearsed and refined. They received ongoing instruction in SS ideology, in Nazi racial theories, in the history and traditions of the SS, and in various other topics that Himmler believed were important for creating committed SS men rather than mere security guards. The administrative duties associated with security operations also consumed time, as guards had to maintain detailed logs of their activities, had to file reports about any incidents or observations of concern, had to participate in security planning meetings, and had to handle various paperwork associated with military organizations. Senior guards who held NCO or officer ranks had additional administrative responsibilities, including supervising junior guards, conducting inspections, managing schedules and duty rosters, handling personnel matters, and interfacing with other SS and police organizations on security coordination. These administrative functions were necessary but tedious aspects of military service that contrasted with the more dramatic, close protection duties, but that were essential for effective security operations. The guards' interactions with Himmler himself varied depending on their ranks and their specific assignments. The most senior bodyguards and the adjutants who were part of Himmler's immediate staff had regular direct contact with him, receiving instructions, providing information, managing his schedule, and generally serving as the human interface between Himmler and his organization. These senior personnel might spend hours daily in Himmler's presence, observing his meetings, traveling with him in vehicles or aircraft, sharing meals with him when he dined informally with his staff, and generally becoming familiar figures whom Himmler relied upon. The relationship between Himmler and his senior guards and staff was apparently relatively cordial by the accounts of survivors, with Himmler treating them as trusted subordinates rather than as faceless servants, though always within the strict hierarchical structure of SS ranks, and always with the understanding that Himmler held absolute authority over their lives and careers. Junior guards and security personnel had much less direct contact with Himmler, seeing him primarily from their guard posts as he passed by or as they maintained perimeter security, while he was somewhere within a secured area. For these guards, Himmler was a distant figure whom they were protecting, but whom they rarely, if ever, spoke with directly. Their experience of service was more about maintaining discipline and readiness at guard posts, about following orders from senior NCOs and officers, and about being part of a military unit whose mission happened to be protecting the Reichsführer-SS rather than about any personal relationship with Himmler. The psychological and moral dimensions of serving as Himmler's guard deserve consideration, as these men were directly facilitating the activities of one of history's greatest mass murderers. The guards protected Himmler as he traveled to and from concentration camps, where he ordered mass murder, as he attended meetings where Holocaust operations were planned and coordinated, as he conducted inspections of Einsatzgruppen killing units, and as he performed all the other activities of his role as architect and administrator of genocide. Were the guards aware of what Himmler was doing and what their protection enabled? Did they have moral qualms about serving him? The available evidence suggests that most of Himmler's guards were committed SS men who believed in Nazi ideology, including its racial antisemitism, who were proud to serve the Reichsführer-SS, and who viewed their role as honorable military service rather than as complicity in crimes. This ideological commitment was precisely why they had been selected for these positions, as Himmler wanted guards who would be loyal not just professionally, but ideologically, who would not question his activities, and who would feel privileged to serve him rather than morally troubled. Some guards presumably knew in explicit detail about the Holocaust and about Himmler's role in it, particularly those who traveled with him to concentration camps and killing sites, and who witnessed or heard about the mass murders being committed. Others may have known, less explicitly, understanding that terrible things were happening to Jews and other victims, but not knowing or not wanting to know the full details. The psychological mechanisms of compartmentalization, ideological justification, obedience to authority, and careerism that allowed ordinary Germans and SS men to participate in or facilitate the Holocaust also operated among Himmler's guards, allowing them to perform their duties while avoiding full moral confrontation with what they were enabling. During the war years, from 1939 to 1945, the daily routines of Himmler's guards adapted to wartime conditions while maintaining the basic patterns of security operations, administrative duties, and ceremonial functions. Himmler traveled more frequently during the war, visiting military headquarters, occupied territories, concentration camps, and various locations where SS units were operating or where Holocaust operations were being conducted. These travels required more extensive security operations as the threats increased with partisan activity in occupied territories, with the possibility of Allied intelligence operations against high-value Nazi targets, and with the general chaos and danger of wartime conditions. Guards assigned to travel security duties worked longer hours, faced more dangerous conditions, and had to maintain higher levels of alertness than during peacetime operations. The war also meant that some of Himmler's guards were periodically assigned to combat duties with Waffen-SS units, as Himmler believed that his security personnel should maintain combat experience and readiness, and that rotation through frontline service would keep them sharp and would maintain their status as warriors rather than merely as ceremonial guards. These combat rotations were typically relatively short, perhaps a few weeks or months, after which the guards would return to protective duties with Himmler. The combat experience presumably was welcomed by some guards as more exciting and meaningful than security duties, though it also meant exposure to the real dangers of warfare, rather than the relatively safe role of protecting Himmler in secure SS facilities. The guards stationed at Himmler's various headquarters and residences during the war maintained round-the-clock security watches, working in shifts that typically lasted 8 or 12 hours. A guard on duty at a headquarters building might spend his shift manning a checkpoint, controlling access to the facility, inspecting credentials of those entering, preventing unauthorized access, and maintaining logs of all entries and exits. Or he might patrol perimeter fences and boundaries, checking for breaches or signs of intrusion, monitoring security systems, and maintaining communications with other guard posts and with command centers. Or he might man an observation post, watching approaches to the facility through binoculars or optical equipment, ready to sound alarms if threats were detected. These duties were routine and often tedious, involving long hours of standing or sitting at posts where nothing threatening ever materialized. But they required constant alertness, as any lapse could potentially allow a security breach. When not on active duty, guards had time for personal activities, including sleep, meals, physical training, recreation, correspondence with families, and various other normal activities of military personnel. The guards' facilities typically included recreational areas where off-duty personnel could relax, could read or write letters, could listen to radio, could play cards or other games, and could socialize with their comrades. The camaraderie among Himmler's guards was reportedly strong, as they shared the elite status and the specialized mission that set them apart from regular SS or military personnel. And the small size of the guard units created tight-knit groups where men knew each other well and developed bonds through shared service. The guards' personal lives were constrained by their duties, as they were essentially on call constantly and could not leave their duty stations or make personal plans without permission. Married guards might be allowed periodic leaves to visit families, but these were limited and subject to operational requirements. The lives of Himmler's guards were thus subordinated entirely to their military duties, in ways that were typical of elite military units, but that were perhaps even more total, given the importance attached to protecting the Reichsführer-SS and given Himmler's unpredictable schedule and demands. In the final months of the war, from late 1944 through May 1945, as Germany collapsed and as Allied forces advanced from east and west, Himmler's activities and movements became more chaotic, and the security situation deteriorated dramatically. Himmler spent time at various locations, including his headquarters, Berlin, and eventually went into hiding as the Nazi regime disintegrated. His guards remained with him through this period, attempting to maintain security even as conditions became impossible and as it became clear that Germany would be defeated. The loyalty of the guards to Himmler apparently remained strong even in defeat, with most staying with him until the very end or until circumstances forced dispersal. When Himmler was captured by British forces on May 23, 1945, while attempting to escape disguised as a common soldier, his immediate bodyguards were not with him as he had dismissed them and was attempting to evade capture alone. However, many of his guards were captured by Allied forces in the war's final days, and they faced interrogation about their service, about what they knew of Himmler's crimes, and about their own roles in the SS and in Nazi atrocities. The guards who survived and who were eventually released after post-war detention faced the burden of having served one of history's most notorious mass murderers, a burden that shaped their remaining lives, though most apparently did not publicly discuss their service or acknowledge complicity in the crimes their service had facilitated. The daily routines of Himmler's guards, reconstructed from survivor accounts, from captured SS documents, from post-war interrogations, and from historical research, reveal lives that were simultaneously privileged and constrained, elite and degraded, professional and deeply complicit in evil. The guards enjoyed material comforts and status that came from serving at the highest levels of the SS. They performed military duties that were demanding and that required skill and dedication. They participated in the elaborate ceremonies and rituals that Himmler created for the SS, and they experienced the pride of being selected for prestigious assignments. Yet they were also serving a mass murderer, facilitating the implementation of genocide, living under constant discipline and surveillance, subordinating all personal life to military demands, and enabling crimes that made them complicit, regardless of their specific knowledge or participation in killing.